September the 30th, 2021. As you're looking at satellite images over the U.S. and parts of Canada and Mexico, a couple of things here that I think are good news. One is, notice how little wildfire smoke there is coming out of California. The fire now is in Southern California, and it's not a small one, but it isn't multiple fires that we're seeing now, not only not in Northern California, but look at Oregon and Washington, over towards Utah and some of the other areas. Even coming out of Canada, there seems to be much less wood smoke. That's always good because I've mentioned this before, that when they drill in the ice cores in the Arctic, they find layers of ash that from volcanoes, and they always correspond to a cooling system like a Marder minimum or something like that, and it has to do with grand solar minimums. And just to be brief on it, because I've said it so many times, during solar minimum, our shields are weak. Our shields are like an electric motor, or our Earth is like a gyro, in the sense that the more voltage you apply to it, the faster it spins. And if you can measure the electromagnetic field around a motor, which you can with an EMF detector, the faster it spins, the greater that field becomes. And that's the same with our planet. The more energy the sun is pumping towards us, hitting our shields. And guys, again, that energy from the North and South Pole, you can measure it with your compass. But the greater that is, the further our shields expand out, just like the electromagnetic field from a motor. And so when it's weak, the not only solar wind, which is not as strong on a continuous basis like it is in grand solar maximum or solar maximum during the cycles, but because the shields are weak, not only is the sun's radiation, but other radiation from space, gamma ray bursts and anything like that, hits our shields, transferred into the Earth, and that heat is transferred into volcanoes. That's where it comes from. And that's why during these cold times, again, look up Mauder, M-A-U-D-E-R, I think, minimum, and understand what happened. But that's what we're seeing now, and you've got multiple volcanoes. I think there's 24 active, maybe another 6 or so that are orange alert, not red alert, but they're watching. And we'll take a couple look at a couple of images from La Palma before the video's over. And what had happened, if you noticed, yesterday that lava had expanded way out into the ocean, and it almost formed into two circles, almost like a figure 8, sideways to the beach. Now that's extending further out, and the volcano is very active as far as the lava release. Multiple fissures are open, and it's again, I don't think there's going to be any type of crack and any big tsunami, but it does appear to be more dangerous. It's taking more land, and they've been through it before. Last time, 1971, and they came back and built a lighthouse on that lava field from 1971. There's a lighthouse and I think some type of hotel there on that lava field, and the way this one's forming, it looks like it would be a good port. So if you get lemons, you make lemonade. And so we'll take a look at a couple of those images again. But Southern California, you've got some wildfire smoke. Notice in the other side of this image coming into the frame here is Category 3 Hurricane Sam. And I'm going to put my let me pause this, and I'm going to point out, it's very hard to see kind of on this map where Bermuda is. And there's a blue dot. Again, I know it's hard to see, but I'm putting the tip of this red arrow on Bermuda right there. And so the SAM is predicted to go to the right of Bermuda or to the east, and that's going to keep the strongest winds away from you guys there. Let me point out now, right now you're starting to feel wind gusts from the south. Notice covering that blue dot again, that is centered right there. And these winds, you're starting to see it. Now, if the track holds true, which it should, the models are coming together, then you should get the weak side and maybe just brush by the edge. but with a Cat 3, sometimes those can be strong enough. So don't let your guard down. And I'd say this for the East Coast, guys, look for rip currents. You got weekend coming up, and kids are going to be swimming and things like that. But watch for that, because this type of storm, this storm can generate swells. It can a little higher tides and rip currents. So be aware of that. But again, for the continental U.S., this one and the storm behind it are both predicted to do about the same trick here, move up into the Atlantic. That's great. So, again, this is a good map. Let's look at La Palma for a moment. Now, guys, this is a look at TV Canaries. You can see it at the top, TV Canaries. And what we're looking, these are live as of 5:06 p.m. tonight, Central Time. Multiple vents are open. You can see one where the lava is bubbling out here. There's one here. And earlier in the afternoon, it looked like one was almost about to come out on the left side of the vent. And I don't think there's going to be any type of tsunami, as I said, or any big crack. Now, the worst case scenario could be much worse than what we're seeing now, even though it is devastating for the people that are in the path of this, and the people that are downwind of the ash, the sulfur smoke, and now the chemicals coming from the mixture in the cooler salt water. But what would be a worse scenario, which may have happened in the past on Canary or on La Palma in the Canaries, would be a Mount St. Helens type eruption. Instead of lava just busting out the top and forming new cones, it blew the side of that mountain off. You remember that? And so if that would have happened here, you would have had somewhat of tsunami, because the close proximity of this volcano to the ocean, unlike Mount St. Helens, was further inland. But this is not that type of volcano. But in the past, if you look at the geology of it, go to Google Earth and zoom down on this island, it does look like at one time it had some type of a Mount St. Helens event with a major landslide, but the island didn't crack in half. But it did slide into the ocean and left a huge valley. I mean, it looks like the Grand Canyon in parts of it. And if we go back earlier today, you can see there's a tremendous amount of smoke and ash. This is coming from the top, and all of it's running to the right of this, which would be to the west of the island, run into the Atlantic. And so that's one of the things they're dealing with. Now, over the long run, this ash becomes fertilizer. That's why you have tremendous areas of banana plantations, and a lot of that has been affected. And so that's going to create some labor problems, because it takes a lot of people to manage the size of those. But on the other side of this island, because it's a volcanic island, are forests of different type of trees, like chestnut trees, not just a grove, but entire forest of them, and other things like that. It's a paradise built on this island, which, again, the ash and things like that become a tremendous fertilizer over the long run. And guys, this is an image from Malaga 24-hour news there. And this is from a rock beach across from this bay, from what's now an expanding section of the island. And it's beginning to get very high in some places. It's just stacking on top of each other. And the reason is you saw all of that lava continuing to pour out now up from multiple vents. Again, another shot from Malaga. You can just type that into YouTube. And what you're looking at is the lava coming down to the very edge of this high cliff, pouring down, and it forming almost like a pyramid structure on the top instead of just a straight drop-off. And you can see it because of the heat. And then around it at the very base is where it is spreading. But the more that piles on top of it, the higher that this thing's going to get, and the further out it will spread just because of gravity. But notice that in some of the last few images here, the lava flow, which is coming from different vents, is more to the right of the initial flow that was right here where it was building up. So you can see it's kind of spreading out along the coast. So we're now having two areas of buildup along this. Now I want to take a look at Google Earth for a moment, point out a couple things, including what I was saying about the area on La Palma itself. Here you have the Canary Islands, right here off the coast of Africa, and then all the way across the Atlantic is the U.S. And as we pull this up, La Palma is out on this would be the northwest section of this group of islands. Tenerife, I think is how they pronounce that, is the larger island, but here is what we've been watching. Now, I just want to pull that back out. Guys, if a section of that island fell off, it's not going to affect anything this far off. You've got too many thousands of miles of ocean. It would take something much bigger, a 10-point quake, a meteor strike into the ocean, or a major tectonic shift like we saw after the X-flare struck Japan and caused the Fukushima earthquakes. It would take something more than that. And even with Fukushima, which was a 9.0, it was more or less the greater part of the tsunami was felt right there on the island of Japan itself. But again, that's a long way off. There's not much chance of that happening. But I do want to point out, if there was any concern, I would point out some of the things that we see as we pull this up. And let me start at the southern part of the island. Down here in Cumbre Viaje, I think is how you pronounce it, you see several lava fields and lava cones through this area. And this is where they're dealing with the volcano now. But north of this, there's a section of this island. Let me get this down to 3D. And now bring it back up again. The south is to the right. That's where the volcano is now. And that's where it's, by the way, these volcanoes on all of the islands are moving to the south of each island. Remember 10 years ago or so when we watched the underwater volcano off the southern tip of another one of these islands? Well, they're moving south, and that's why you see the multiple, again, these vents here and lava cones. But here, notice this big area, and this would be north and northeast of El Paso and La Palma. It looks like the side was blown out. Let me kind of get it in here. Look at that. It was almost like St. Helens. Now, of course, that would put a lot of debris down into the ocean, could create some tidal wave, but there's a much greater chance of something like that happening than the island cracking. Now, let me say this. A lot of this flat land, like Los Llanos and Tazacorte, La Laguna, these towns are built on a lot of that debris field. Again, let me back this up. On both sides, you've got a large area here that seems to have probably came from that and some of the other volcanic eruptions. Now we've got the lava entering this area, and in the images you can see that, again, the lighthouse that's just to the south of the lava flow into the ocean now has the lighthouse and the hotel on it. So again, it's an island building thing, and it's just that you've got to realize during solar minimum that these type of volcanic activity, these bursts and these lava flows may occur more than 50 years if you think back to 1971. So because of solar minimum, and we're going into grand solar minimum, which is going to put more stress on the Earth because our shields will continue to weaken as the cycles weaken. So just think about where these lava cones are as you rebuild. Now, I think all of the highways are shut off to the south part of the island. But again, looking at this section here, and it's tremendous. Like I said, it looks like the Grand Canyon. And if you watch Bushcraft Bear's video, he's on a perch or ledge right up here on the hill in this area looking back. And you can see some of the greenhouses and the banana fields on the other side of this ledge right here. And it is huge. If you guys have watched that, he's looking down from over here back towards it. But that is a dwarf that you see in his videos compared to what's behind him as he's filming and to his north. Look at that. So that would be the situation to where that if you had a buildup of lava or pressure that the vents couldn't handle, then you may have something like that. That would be the worst case scenario that I could think of for the island. We don't know. we're learning new science, both on the sun, both on the planet, because of the decreasing solar cycles and the decreasing energy in the solar cycles, which are, again, 11.8 years. That corresponds to the sun's binary twin, Jupiter. Its orbit is 11.8 years, and it affects the solar cycles because they react against each other. But again, this area right there looks like a Mount St. Helens event, and that would be the worst case scenario. Not saying that's going to happen, and I don't think it would be that large, but it's interesting that that's what this island looks like. Excuse me, it's a heads up, guys. Oh, by the way, in the video I put up last night about the images of La Palma, and in a nutshell, it had been a long day. We had to tear off and rebuild the porch, and then I spent about 3 hours in the studio putting the drum tracks and the bass and the two rhythm guitars and the lead together. And what happens, and my major in college was audio engineering, is you get listening fatigue. It takes hours to do the different tracks. It's not spontaneous as far as you've got a group together. And so your ears experience, again, listening fatigue. And when I listened to it this morning on YouTube, it's a little different from the master mix because you're going down to MP3. But the bass overboost was way too much. And again, I blame that on myself. So this afternoon when I got in, I had time to take a look at it. So later, I may put it up with some different images, but the master is so much better. But I appreciate all the comments you guys said about that video, and I apologize for that rough early mix. But we're watching this, guys. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.